Hello and welcome to Georgia Romance Writers Moonlight and Magnolia Virtual Writing Conference. This is the first time we've had a virtual writing conference. 2020 and 2021 have been very different and interesting years, and we are so excited that you have decided to join us to talk about writing, to re-engage, to refresh, to re-energize your writing careers. There is something here for every writer at every stage. And I just wanted to start by welcoming you to our conference. We hope to interact with you on our Facebook, our Twitter, Instagram. The speakers that you will see over the course of this weekend will also give you their contact information, email addresses, and ways to reach out to them. So thank you so much for being with us today. And this session is actually called Building Your Characters. So we're going to go through what I do to build my characters and how I fill my stories with memorable people. And hopefully some of these tips and tricks will be helpful for you. And to introduce myself, my name is Nikki Salcedo. I'm actually one of the conference co-chairs this year, so you may have seen some emails from me. And again, welcome. I'm also a past president of Georgia Romance Writer, and I've been a longtime member of Romance Writers of America. I have a degree in English and creative writing from Stanford University, but I consider myself a Southern girl. I grew up most of my life in Georgia, and I have been a Maggie Award recipient 2 times, and I'm also a previous Golden Heart finalist, so I know a little about romance and how to make your stories really vibrant. I teach writing classes across the country and now in our virtual world across the world. So excited to see all of you from wherever you may be viewing us from. And during the day, I actually have another job. I'm in the healthcare industry. I'm a behavioral health and healthcare strategy expert. I teach mental health first aid. I write movie reviews. I have 4 kids. I have 3 cats. I've been married for 20 years. So lots going on in my life, but writing is always my passion and a priority. I'm super happy to talk with you all today. And we have a few rules in my workshops. I have 2 workshops that I'll be sharing over this conference. One is this one on building characters. Another is writing through it all. So how to write if you're experiencing maybe grief, depression, a global pandemic, and keep you energized and motivated. So in my workshops, I have a few rules. I may say something you don't see on the screen. You can, take note of what you hear me say. I want you to trust yourself, challenge yourself. Don't make any excuses for your writing. We're all learning and we're always learning. Keep writing. Writing is supposed to be fun for us. We love writing, and I want you to love writing as well. Have fun, come back to these notes, and remember that you are a character too. I do not own the rights to any of the images that you might see in this presentation. I'm just sharing this for educational purposes. And I'm going to show now and at the end some ways to contact me. Just if you look up Nikki Salcedo, you'll find me on social media, and I'm happy to connect with you all. So we are going to get started. We'll start with a pop quiz. And throughout the workshop, I'm going to ask you to think about a work in progress that you have, or maybe even if you're brainstorming a new project. So it doesn't matter where you are, we're going to use some tips and tricks here to help you. So one of the first things I'd like to ask attendees in my workshop is, who are characters that you like from fiction, and why do you like them? Do you like Mr. Darcy? Do you like Darth Vader? And why? And after we think about fiction, let's think back in our life. Who are favorite people? It could be your pet. It could be your 3rd grade teacher. But why? What have they done to be memorable for you? And I'd love it if you just take some notes and you can say your 3rd grade teacher. My 3rd grade teacher was Mrs. Lambeth. She paid attention to me. She really looked at me. And I was a shy student, so it made her memorable that she paid attention to me. So think about why someone in your life has been memorable. Those are things we're going to call back when we're creating characters, because we do want our characters to feel real. And then think about yourself. We are characters too. Are you reserved? Are you outgoing? Do you like to dance? Maybe you cook. What are things people in your family do? What are your strengths and weaknesses? One of my weaknesses, I'm super optimistic. It sometimes gets me into trouble. But I'm also very reclusive. I love my private time, my alone time. So maybe that's a character flaw in me, but just something for us to think about is what's inside of you. So a character from fiction, people in your life, and even you. So hopefully you've written down some notes here. We are making all of these handouts available, so you don't have to do screen captures. I'm happy to share this presentation with you. So we're going to start with, a character study. Why are we even talking about characters? People read stories for character. And yes, plot is important, but secondary. And particularly if you are here thinking about writing romance or a story with romantic elements, the people matter. People matter so much. They need to evoke emotion and empathy. They need to act and react, evolve. And a good story, and your favorite stories, you've closed the book and you're still thinking about them. So your fiction characters have to feel real. And if you are writing nonfiction, because we are welcoming writers of all genres here, maybe you're writing a memoir, you're actually creating a fiction of a character who is real. So remember, we're doing creative writing here, and creative writing is both in narrative nonfiction and in fiction writing. Our memory is false, so we have to recreate characters if we're basing them on real people. But no matter what you're doing, fiction or nonfiction, if you're writing high literature, if you're writing sci-fi, action, adventure, romance, suspense, thriller, horror, you have to bring those characters to life. And if we laid out all of those genres, we could probably pick a favorite character from each of them. It's because we thought those characters felt very real to us. Your job as the writer is to make your readers feel something. And do we like a character? Do they make us feel uncomfortable? Do we love them? Do we hate them? And it's not about good or bad, because sometimes there's an, in quotes, bad character who we love. And earlier I said Darth Vader because we loved to hate Darth Vader. Darth Vader is a great sort of icon of villainy, but memorable. So you want your characters, regardless of goodness or badness, to be characters we love or hate. And sometimes there might be a character who makes lots of good decisions that we don't like. I have a favorite TV show called Lost. If you haven't seen it, check it out online. Some people on an airplane crashed on a mysterious island. One of the main characters was Jack Shephard, and Jack always did the right thing. And I just couldn't stand him. He was always seeking the right thing to do. He was actually a good character, but sometimes I was like, make the bad choice, make the tough choice. But so it's not good or bad. Ultimately, I did like him, but it's not the good or the bad. It's what emotions are you evoking? And as the writer, before you start writing, you should say, I want my readers to love this character. I want this readers to have questions about this character. I want the readers to hate this character, to be annoyed, to think about their best friend, to think about their mother. Your job is to think that, have a plan before you start writing. Sometimes I'll see someone, I'll read their work and they'll say, I'm surprised nobody likes this character. And I'll say, well, what did you want us to feel? If you want us to like the character, then show us that. And that could mean, are they kind? Are they seeking justice? Are they sort of the Harry Potter outsider alone person? Are they new to the world, like Ariel? Are they consistent and constant? Does that make us like them? Are they funny? If you think about movies that have Sandra Bullock in there, Sandra Bullock is kind of a funny character, so that's why we like her. Maybe they've been wronged. So that's one of the ways we identify characters who we like or love. And characters we don't like often do some things. Maybe they are cruel, self-centered. They might be set in their ways or resistant to change. They lie, they manipulate, they're inconsistent. So we'll get to it as we go through this presentation. A good character is a little bit of all these things, but generally speaking, there are ways we love characters, ways we hate characters, and the best characters are going to have a little of both. Some of you might enjoy studying characters the way I do. At the end of the presentation, I'll list my resources. This is from a favorite book that I have about character archetypes. If you haven't seen these, it's just like an easy way to bucket characters. And maybe you can go even further back into Greek tradition where you have the mentor or the chorus or the trickster character. But here on the screen, we're seeing some traditional archetypes. Sometimes they're broken up by gender. I definitely like to change the gender expectations of my character. So if there's a bad boy character, I actually make it a bad boy who's a woman. So you don't have to stick to specific gender roles, but it is a fun way to look at different types. If you're old enough to remember a show called Gilligan's Island, there are a lot of character archetypes on that show. So the professor is one we see on the screen. There was a professor character. There was the spunky kid. There was the seductress who was ginger. So lots of our favorite books and TV shows and movies use these archetypes. For me, it's a fun way to have a quick idea of what I want to do with my characters. Some people start up front by naming their characters. I'm actually terrible about this. I may write an entire book with a placeholder name, like a letter. I'm not sure. Sometimes I do know the name, so everyone doesn't start with a name at the beginning. Some of you will and do. That is great. For those of you who need some time, naming your character can help shape your character. And sometimes it's fun. I have a few examples on the screen. You can use naming books and look up word origins by different cultures and different faith traditions. Those are a great way to name characters. So if you have a character who's optimistic, if noble, kind, Heidi's kind of a name that aligns to what her name meaning was. On the same token, someone like Cruella de Vil is supposed to remind us that she's a cruel devil. And we've seen modern takes on some of our favorite villains where we go deeper into their characters, but the original archetype was just a straight villain. So cruel devil. If you've read the book To Kill a Mockingbird, there's a character named Boo Radley, who is probably one of the best characters in literature. But Boo is a favorite name for me because Boo means something scary. That's what you say. But then Boo in many cultures means like your honey, your sweetheart, someone who's dear to you. So your Boo could mean something mysterious or scary, or it also could mean something loving. And so Boo Radley was a character that was both mysterious and ultimately sort of kind and saving the day. So there are ways you can play with the name, subtle ways. You can be ironic, you can, be funny, name character opposite. And if you read romance novels, give $1 for every time you've seen a character named Devlin. We love a hero with a D-E-V start of their name because we want to feel like they're bad and mysterious. So have fun. There are a few other tricks that I do for looking and finding names, and it's walking through cemeteries, which some people might think is morbid. I think cemeteries are a great name to see unusual or often names that have gone out of popular use. Great last names. So if you're using baby name books, going online, but for those of us who've maybe had a sheltered year and want to get back out into the real world, having a walk through a cemetery is another great way to find a name. As we move into sort of building up your character, one of the best ways to start is with what they want and what motivates them. In many cases, the motivation and the goal for the character is something very simple. It could be renovate a house, take a road trip, drive across country. The goal isn't always save the world in a dramatic fashion from ultimate doom. Sometimes it is bring a box back to my grandmother, maybe save a farm. So the goal has to be there, but the goal is directly tied to a person. There are other things that happen in the plot that come from external sources. Characters may act and react, but the goal is purely from inside the character. They must want something internal that nobody can see, and something external. So maybe they want redemption and they want to save the farm. Redemption is something inside, nobody can see that. Saving the farm is the external desire. So your character should have both. And those goals and motivations should be the driving force in the story. So what they want should be directly tied to what you write. But at the same time, your characters have to be a little bit broken. So they want something hopefully for a good reason, but they're going to face some obstacles before they can achieve it. Some of those obstacles might be external, that's conflict. Some of it might be internal, that might be a character flaw. A story is being told because something is wrong. We never read a story because everything is perfect, beginning to end. Your character wakes up, it's a great day, their clothes are ironed, easy traffic, had a cup of coffee, met a nice person, fell in love, went home, bought a house, found a dog. That might not be a great story. We do want that for our own lives, but in a story, it's overslept, traffic, spilled the coffee, saw the person they're interested in, but they're moving tomorrow to leave for a new job. Goes to rescue a puppy, the puppy's already owned by a family, right? That's conflict. Those are the things that kind of make us keep reading the story. So we start with the goal and motivation, and then something must go wrong. There has to be a problem. That external problem is called the conflict. The internal problem is called the character flaw. And without these two things, unfortunately, there's not a story. So as our job as the writer is to kind of cause trouble. We have to cause trouble for the characters who we love. We want our readers to fall in love with, but we're going to put some obstacles, conflicts, and flaws in their way. Once we move forward and we're deepening our characters, I want you to think about them as really something you are bringing to life. So Pinocchio or Frankenstein, depending on your sensibility, how do you bring something to life? Well, people who live, speak, think, and move. And it is so important for our characters to speak in a way that is distinct, and that dialogue moves the plot along. So it should show us emotion, or even show us that our narrator cannot be trusted. That's the unreliable narrator. They should speak in a way, maybe we doubt them, maybe we believe them, but it has to be important to moving the plot along. It shouldn't just be, I drove in traffic, it was clear, I found a dog, I had a cup of coffee. That's not really pertinent to the story. We don't want to hear that. So when they speak, let it be tied to moving the story along, but they need to think. There should be some narrative sections, that's parts without dialogue, where we're understanding, I'm really worried about this. I'm excited. I've never done this before. This is the 100th time I've done this. What are they thinking? That fills us in without a huge amount of backstory dump, but make sure your characters are pausing to think as we move through the story. If they're just talking and doing action, we're not really going to feel connected with them. So have them speak, have them think, and they should move. And it's not just movement of getting in a car and going on a road trip. It's also their mannerisms with how they cook, how they pet their dog or treat their dog. Do they touch their hair? Do they have a gesture? Do they smile? What kind of mannerisms? And if you have several characters in your story, make sure you make them diverse. Every character can't be the lady who, pulls at her hair. At some point, that's going to feel false. we don't just touch our hair all day long. And yes, we love the hero who touches the heroine's face, but maybe he has another gesture he does. Maybe he helps her with the leash of the dog they've found. Maybe he picks up something he finds as they're taking a walk. If somebody's in an office, how do they handle paperwork? How do they open and close doors? How do they sit? How do they stand? So your character should move. They should feel real. So think, speak, move. It is really important for those actions to reveal character. And good characters help your plot. Now, if all of this seems overwhelming to you, one of the tricks and tips that I like is called method writing. And it's, how do you write someone who's not like you? Maybe we're writing high fantasy and you're like, I've never lived on this planet with dragons. Maybe I've never lived in a spaceship. Maybe I've never been a divorcee buying a beach house. But you can still write that story. But what you have to do is really imagine yourself as that character. I think it's important. I'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but to make your character feel real, you have to almost make them like you. Do you have fears? Do you have hopes? Do you have dreams? What do you feel when you're in the grocery store? What would your character feel if they were in the grocery store? So you might walk around and say, today I'm going to walk around and imagine how my hero sees the world. Is he very optimistic? Is he very energetic? Is he, the guy who smiles all the time? Is your heroine someone who is reserved, who's quiet? Then what is her experience like in the grocery store walking to work? So put yourself aside and step into your character. And think about your character on a very personal basis. How do they see the world? And how might they act or react the way they do? So you become your character. That's just one of the tips I use for really getting into my characters. A long time ago, I used to do character interviews. So I'm just including this in this presentation. It's not actually something I do anymore. A character interview, sometimes you can see there's hundreds of questions and it's like favorite ice cream, what's their earliest memory? For me, I would suggest if you want to do a character interview, try to keep it simple. Biggest accomplishments, strength, their goals, motivations, conflicts. What's their philosophy? Is it, winner takes all, win at all cost? Maybe it's help the little guy. How did they react in certain situations? There's a knock in the middle of the door. What would your character do? Grab a baseball bat, go out the back door, just open the door and say hello. A pivotal moment, a secret, a fear, a regret, their outlook. So you don't need to say favorite color is blue, favorite ice cream is chocolate, unless the blue is coming into the story because they're renovating a house, or the chocolate is coming up because near the beach house they're renovating, there's an ice cream shop. So only answer questions that you think may relate to your character in the story. And some of the questions might come up as you're writing. I do believe in plotting. I do believe in writing by the seat of your pants. What that means is maybe you don't know there's an ice cream shop until you get to chapter 20. And then you say, what's my hero's favorite ice cream? Well, maybe she really loves, butter pecan. You didn't know it until that moment. So try not to use these exercises to procrastinate. It's really easy for a writer to think of lots of ways to research and do things to stay away from writing. What I want you to do here is think about it and try some quick techniques so you can start writing as soon as you are done with this conference. So how can we think about our characters, interview them for the questions that might be pertinent for them? Now we're going to take a little bit of a step back, and I'm going to have some images that I will describe on the screen for you. What I want to say here is it's important for us to think about our characters, maybe by professions. Some of us are writing historical fiction, maybe stories set in other worlds, sci-fi, paranormal, fantasy. But even in those worlds, some of those characters might have traditional contemporary jobs. So if you're writing a duke, or if you're writing a lawyer, or if you're writing, a dragon slayer, think about what the profession means as an archetype. On the screen, I'm showing some options: an assassin, a lawyer, mathematician, fighter. You can see these are different types of work professions. Yes, being an assassin is a job, but how might that frame how this character works? So I want you just to pause and think about, what is the profession of your character? And we're going to have a look at what this might mean going further. So if I said lawyer a second ago, and the first image was Atticus Finch from the movie version of To Kill a Mockingbird, and he was sort of constant sense of security. And then I'm showing some other lawyers now on the screen. And earlier we did some character archetypes. So what if we mixed a profession with an archetype? So there's not one type of lawyer. You could have one who's spunky. You could have one who's sort of the innocent waif. You could have one who's the crusader. They're going to come across as different kinds of people. You would never confuse these lawyers that we've seen from movies and TV shows, because they have a profession plus their archetype. So a good way to think about your characters is how to blend different components of who they are. And so earlier I showed a picture of mathematician, the women from Hidden Figures, so who worked with NASA. But what other types of mathematicians? We have some who might be the traditional professor, or some who are the lost soul or the free spirit. So mathematician gives us some set of character traits, but then you're going to layer it. I'm always disappointed when I read something and the mathematician is just the boring person. And if you've ever met mathematicians, they actually can be quite exciting and have other components to their lives. That's when we believe it's real. That's when we're reading a book and we're like, oh, I love that character. So write in a way that your characters become filled with depth and realism. And fighters is an interesting word because we first saw Bruce Lee, so martial artist. But what if we said a fighter plus their goal? So we talked about, goal, motivation, conflict. So profession plus goal. You're a fighter. And what if you want freedom? What if you want to save your family? What if you have to prove your worth? You're a fighter at your core, but we've layered on another aspect through goal, motivation, and conflict of what your fully formed character might be. And these are characters, in my opinion, that I love, that I think are like engaging, powerful, but very different. And if you've never seen the first Rocky, you should check it out. It's like a great character story. I think it's just about boxing, but it's really not. Like, what is it like to fight? What is it like to overcome adversity? So these are ways that a fighter isn't just an archetype, but becomes real. I showed an assassin earlier, and I had a Terminator. Terminator is sort of a cyber, both a robot and a biological life form, if you want to get into some technical details. But an assassin could be lots of other kinds of people. Like, what if you're seeking the truth or redemption? What if you want revenge? So in this case, what if you have a profession and you want to combine it with the theme of your book? Your book should have a theme, and that impacts what kind of person we're going to see as the character. So just saying an assassin alone isn't enough. You're going to have to give us some of those layers so we can really think about who we're reading about in your story. Now, the world is changing a lot, and the way we're reading characters and the depth we want is becoming more intricate. So on the screen, I'm bringing back actually some words I showed earlier when I was like, decide if we should love or hate your character. I do believe you should know, I want you to love this character. I want you to dislike this character. I want you to feel curious. But the very best characters are characters who kind of sit right in the middle. Maybe they're tipping the scale a little bit more one way or another, but there's something we can see and recognize with them. So they're not just bad and they're not just good. So in the center example, I have Loki. Loki is inconsistent, manipulative, controlling, lies all the time. He's always like the quintessential trickster. But Loki is always like the outsider. Loki is always kind of funny. And if you know the details of Loki's birth, you know he's been wronged. So I'm showing you a character who has caused a lot of trouble and has been a villain in many ways, but has also got traits that we look for in our heroes. I have Rebecca from Ted Lasso, you know, sort of maybe cruel, maybe manipulative, but also someone who's been wronged and who's actually brilliantly honest. So a character I really like who has also done terrible things. So it's not, okay, we forget. We want the nuanced characters, and I have Killmonger, and it's not just because he's a beautiful specimen of a man, though that helps, but what if he was really fighting for justice and in a real legitimate way he believed, but unfortunately then maybe was cruel, maybe was resistant to change. So you can have a villain where we're looking and we're finding some good traits, or someone who's a villain and ultimately becomes a hero. So this is what helps us get really excited about the characters that we will read in your stories. Our favorite characters are both good and bad. And I like to say our favorite characters have a code. So I have Lupin, I have Ted Lasso, and I have Dominic Toretto on the screen, because these are characters who live by a code, and it is finding justice, you know, believing. Like, being optimistic is really tough. What would that be like if you had belief in the people around you, every person you met? Or maybe you seem like a simple race car street racer, but family is the most important thing to you. So having a code shows us one type of character, a street racer, okay, but a street racer who really believes family and integrity is the most important thing. Well, that's kind of a more interesting character. A football coach, well, a football coach is kind of mean, angry, and shouting at you. What if there's a football coach who is like, I believe in you. Kindness and humor is the center of what I do. What if there's sort of a con artist, but the con is to actually reveal the truth about his family's past, to seek justice. So that's how we're going to layer the code on our character. And we're rethinking our characters, because when I was a kid growing up, characters were bad, that's the villain, and good, that's the hero, the end. And on the left, I have two characters from the movie The Karate Kid, and it was villain and hero. And if anyone has watched the reboot called Cobra Kai on Netflix, we know someone who we used to think was a hero can actually make mistakes, maybe be a quasi-villain. And the person we used to think of as the villain can actually be a hero, someone we fall in love with. I've fallen in love with a villain from my childhood. Yes, it's good writing. It's giving us those layers of understanding who they are, what motivates them, what do they want, what's their path to redemption and their theme, and you know, where do they work? Does it matter? It actually does kind of layer on, even if it's not central to the story, it gives us a little bit of a glimpse into how we're going to perceive these characters. So we are here with Georgia Romance Writers at Moonlight and Magnolias. So we're talking a lot about romance, but as we think about all the different things we write, I want you to remember that your characters by genre is an important consideration. So think about what you're writing. You might be writing a romantic suspense, maybe you're writing paranormal fantasy, but questions you want to ask yourself, which is, in romance, it's always, why is the romance the last thing you need? Funny question, but it is true. If you're writing a great romance, your characters are not looking for love, they're looking for something else. That means both main characters. In a mystery, why are they curious? Why are they good? What is it that they have that makes them good at solving problems? That's part of their character. For horror or suspense, like, what are you scared of? Are you scared to be in a lake house all by yourself? then I don't know why we always go to the mysterious, scary lake house, but is it related to the story? What makes you afraid? What makes our character afraid? It actually doesn't matter if we see a pit of snakes, and I actually don't mind snakes. When I finally ever touched one, I was like, oh, they're kind of dry and they're not as disgusting as I thought. They were very nice. But if we see Indiana Jones and a pit of snakes, we know Indiana Jones doesn't like the snakes. So it is horrifying for him. So it's not just the horror of something, but what is the character's reaction? For YA, how do they fit in the world? Same for sci-fi, paranormal, fantasy. There's a world that you are building. How does the character fit into it? Are there special powers or rules of that world? And in general fiction, it's a lot of times about change, especially in literary fiction. Are they growing? Are they changing? And for nonfiction, it's, seeing the world, oftentimes stories of perseverance, but it is important as you're crafting your characters to think about the genre you're writing in, because if you're doing a lot of sort of high literary character seeking change, but you're writing a suspense horror, there might not be time for that type of character in a story where we're going to focus a little bit more on the plot. So make sure your character is appropriate for the genre that you are writing in. So I do have some final tips as we round out our time today, which is try to reveal your characters slowly. It's taken many years for us to be the people we are today. So as they're changing through the course of the story, it shouldn't be a light switch. They should be growing, revealing, changing slowly. And they don't always grow. You can have a character who might stay the same, but maybe we as readers have changed a little bit, or think about their flaws. They should be flaws we have. Is it not wanting to do the dishes? Is it procrastinating? Is it always being late, or maybe being hyper organized? And a good character isn't always the hero. Sometimes the hero is a mixed of good and bad. But try to think about your character as much as you spend thinking about plot, as you think about theme and action. So your character should be incredibly important to your story. And I hope that it is fun for you to build your characters. So some of the things I do when I'm thinking about my characters, I actually spend a lot of time driving in a quiet car, taking walks. I think a lot about characters. So for you, should we love or hate them? Do they have an archetype or profession? Are you going to come up with their name now or maybe in the future? Think about their GMC, that's goal, motivation, conflict. Maybe they have a character flaw. Tell us how they think and speak and act. Try to get inside of them. This is a character not like you. Just imagine, what if I was going skydiving and it was fun? What if I was going skydiving and I was terrified? You go into the brain of these different types of characters. Remember to keep that nuance. It's a little bit of good and bad. Think about the genre. We're going to give breadcrumbs, so reveal slowly, but just say, oh, this character I wasn't sure about. Actually, I'm starting to love them. This little thing they did. They handed, the stuffed animal to the kid in the stroller. I see their kindness. It's just a little thing. Instead of saying, by the way, you need to love this character. This is the main character. This is the hero. Show us. Those are the breadcrumbs of discovery. And remember, as much time on the plot as you do on characters. So the characters are, I think, as equal, if not more important to the plot. So my favorite books I've listed here over the years, there's probably dozens or hundreds of writing books. These are the ones I'm sticking with that have served me well. And the first two are actually those archetype books, because I figure for me, when I really know my character, then the story writes itself. And that's sometimes a problem. Somebody has an idea or premise they're trying to write. It's difficult. The middle sags. It's hard to get to the climactic part. How do we get to the resolution? I often find it's because they haven't fully understood their character. So character is where I start. GMC by Deborah Dixon is just a classic and a favorite book. Really simplistic ways of saying my hero wants X because Y, but they can't have it because of Z. That is goal, motivation, conflict. Wants it because, but can't have it. I love this book. Please get it. It's a favorite. When I was in college, one of my creative writing classes had writing fiction by Janet Burroway. My copy is so dog-eared. Each section, it's a section on dialogue, and it's an example from a book or a short story of really great dialogue, of narrative, of character, of action. So for me, that book is like my favorite of all time writing book. It's hard to come by, but you can find it online, or sometimes I found it in used bookstores. I'm always collecting copies of it. And then Stephen King on writing, just because he's prolific, but despite the fact that he's known for horror, and sometimes people have a very biased view of genre fiction, and we shouldn't. I love genre fiction. It's amazing. His books are about characters. And so you're thinking, oh, it's about, a dog that goes rabbit. It's about this isolated mountain hotel. It's about, murder and mayhem. It is always about people. So I love the On Writing book. I think it's a great tool for writers thinking about either their work in progress or before they get started. And to get ready for this presentation, I did pull together some questions I've had from other writing workshops I've given. So this is our Q&A section. I'll also give you a way to reach out to me after if you have some more questions. But what if I've gotten feedback that my character is unlikable? What does that mean? Well, in the beginning, we talked a little bit about things we can do that create empathy. And that means, are they the lonely kid? Are they fighting for justice? Are they an outsider? Are they positive, funny? What are those traits? So think about the things you like. Remember, we started our pop quiz with people in our lives, people from fiction, maybe even ourselves. What are things that we found as positive traits? How can you infuse your story, your character with more of those? And so it might be your character seems unlikable because we're not finding a way to relate to them. We're not finding them empathetic. So think about ways you can add more of that, and we can understand their motivation. So even our villains should be characters we like, even if we disagree with them on every turn. It has to be a believable motivation. So if you feel like your characters are unlikable, go back, layer in things that make them real, and connect us to some of those traits of empathy. My critique partner says, my main characters are always the same. What can I do to change that? I had this from a session a few weeks ago. I thought this was an interesting question. So the critique partners read many of this person's work, and he basically said, all of my characters are the same. So my suggestion was write down what is your character? Is this the professor type? Is this the crusader? Is this the spunky kid, the outsider? What are the traits you're giving them? Do they walk a certain way? Do they speak a certain way? And write them down for each story you have. And if you find that they're all sort of cranky, lonely, motorcycle outcasts, then maybe either create a series of just this kind of one character type you're stuck with, but how can you change that? Can you have one guy on the motorcycle who is not the lost soul, who's actually optimistic and very friendly? What are ways you can change? So catalog what you're writing. It's good to have just even a note card that says my characters have these few character traits. And if you're writing multiple books, keep track of what you are doing. I think we do tend to like similar characters, so I can understand where this concern comes from. We're probably drawn to and feel more comfortable writing certain types of characters, but our readers are going to want to see something different every time. So that means create a style guide or a character interview so you can keep track of the differences. Diversity is very important. Can I or should I try to write characters who are not like me? This is a very important conversation. I appreciate this question coming to me. And I would say, yes, you can write any kind of character. You can write a character who's a different gender than you, ethnicity, faith. It is possible we're creative writers, but you should only do so if you can write from a position of empathy and respect. If you do not think you can do that, The issue that often comes up is othering. It's when we view a group in a simplistic way, that all these people do this one thing or these set of things in a stereotypical way, and they're not really viewed in a humanistic way. And I told you earlier, get into all of your characters, and that means all of them, even if it's someone who's not your same cultural background, not your same gender. You need to view them with humility, humanity, and respect. So you can't write a man character and be like, all men are jerks and dumb and I hate them. No, men are as varied as women are and are friends of any gender or orientation, are as nuanced as I am. They are the same as me. They want happiness and food and shelter, some fun times, a good book, a walk with their dog. Everybody wants the same thing. So if you're going to view a group without considering their love, hopes, and dreams, then I would suggest you do not. So if you are in doubt, if you're having a question, then do not. But can you and should you, if you're willing to be sympathetic or empathetic to different types of people and draw them in a realistic way without stereotypes, I think a good writer can. So it's a tricky question, and if you're going to tackle it, good luck. How can I make a character growth arc or character change seem realistic? Slow it down. It has to take time. It's very unrealistic for someone to be like, I'm going to be the banker who closes down your farm and I hate everything. And then 3 chapters later, like, I really am going to change the farm. Show us how the character changes, how it is tied to their internal hopes, external experiences that you're going to show us. You can't just tell us. You have to see that the mean banker sees the farm at sunset and it reminds him of his grandfather. We have to see the hard work that the heroine is putting in to renovate the place. And it makes him think of his sister, who was always kind of a take charge, get her hands dirty working. So show us the character growth or arc so it seems realistic, and make it take time over the story. It should be something that grows over time. And finally, can you contact me? Yes, you can absolutely contact me. I am super happy to connect with you about your writing if you have more questions. If you are currently at the conference watching, we have an app called Whova, which we are using, and you can send me a message through there. I'm also showing my email address on the screen, author.nikkisalcedo@gmail.com. And there are lots of ways you can find me. I write movie reviews. I have a website, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. When I read, and this year was a challenging one, I didn't read nearly as much. I do hashtag the books I read, so you can see I read literature and romance and shapeshifters, and I read business books, so lots of everything. But it's a fun way for you to get a sense of my character. So hopefully your final pop quiz today is, what is something that resonated with you? I hope something changed the way you think about characters. Maybe you discovered something about your character. So what did you discover? And then what will you do differently when you write or revise? How might you layer profession, character, theme, archetype to make your characters really robust? So I'm wishing you good luck. I hope to meet some of you in person, online. Thank you to Georgia Romance Writers. Thank you to our first ever virtual Moonlight and Magnolias writing conference. I appreciate you all being flexible and creative with us during this strange time. But thank you for staying focused on your writing. And I hope that you will really make your writing a priority. So don't procrastinate. Don't use these tips as a way to distract you from getting your work done, but maybe what we can do is get you to write more words and write more words faster. So thank you and enjoy your conference.